Okay, last question I'm going to finish up for today is question 8 here, in which we are writing more equations for lines. So before we even start, I'm going to write the general equation for any line, y equals mx plus c, where m equals the slope, c is the y-intercept. Okay, so let's look at the first line we want to write. We want to write an equation for a line that is parallel to y equals 3x plus 2. So I'm going to write down that equation, y equals 3x plus 2. In this equation, the slope is going to be this line right here, this number right here. So m equals 3, that's my slope. If I want a line parallel to this, it must have the same slope. Parallel equals same slope. Now, it does not specifically say which line we want that is parallel, so we can literally write any line we want down that has a slope of 3. So an example of that could be y equals 3x minus 4. Or we could have y equals 3x plus 700. We could also have y equals just 3x by itself. All of these lines are parallel because they all have the same slope of 3x. If I graphed those, let's say I do a mini graph over here, you will notice that all of these lines are going to go the exact same direction. It's just depending on where they hit on the y-axis. So in this case, plus 2, that's a y-intercept here. That would be roughly what our graph looks like there. If our intercept was minus 4, we go down to minus 4, we graph another line, and these two lines would be parallel to each other. If we have y equals 3x, we don't have a y-intercept. That means it goes through 0. That can be in there, and also that line will be parallel. So all of those are parallel lines. Now, if we want to get more specific, we're going to get to one of those in question 3 here. But when you have a point you can go through, you do have to find a specific line. Let's look at the second one then. So for the second one, we're told a line parallel to the equation 2y plus 5x equals 1. So this line here is not in the same format. It's not in y equals mx plus c format. So it's very hard for us to figure out what the slope is. But we can do that. And the way we can do that is we can rearrange this equation so that it reads y equals instead of this equation as it is here. So that's what I'm going to do. In my equation, 2y plus 5x equals 1. I want to get y all by itself. I want to solve for y. Okay? So if I want y by itself, I need to get rid of this 5x somehow. So I'm going to take this, I'm going to move it to the other side of the equation. If it's plus x here, it's going to be minus 5x on the other side. So now I'm left with 2y over here equals, and I'm going to have minus 5x plus 1. Now, why did I put the minus 5x first? Well, looking at my equation over here, I always have my x before the number. So that's why I wrote minus 5x first, and then I added the plus 1 at the end instead of writing it the other way around. Now, we still want y to be all by itself. So now we need to get rid of this 2. So I'm going to divide this side by 2. That's going to cancel it out. When I divide on this side, I'm going to divide the whole equation on this side by 2. That means I'm left with y on this side. And on the other side, I'm just going to divide each of these terms by 2. So on this one, I have minus 5/2 x, and then I have plus 1/2. Where's my slope in this line? Well, always right in front of my x value. So m is equal to minus 5/2. Perfect. So if we want to find an equation that is parallel to this line, it needs to have the same slope of m equals 5/2. So I'm going to write y equals negative 5/2 x, and then I can throw any number I want on the end here. I could throw plus 7, I could throw minus 5/2 x, minus 200, any number we want. We just stick on the end here, and that's a parallel line. For the third part, we want to find the equation of a perpendicular line that passes through this point here, 4, 3. So once again, y equals mx plus b, or plus c, that's the equation of our line. This is our slope. This is our y-int. In this line here, y equals negative 2x plus 1. The slope is going to be m equals negative 2. To find a perpendicular slope, so remember, perpendicular means if you have a line here, the other line is going to cross through at a 90-degree angle here. A perpendicular line has a slope that is what we call a negative reciprocal of our actual slope. If you are looking for a negative reciprocal, so negative reciprocal, you do two things. One, you flip your number, and two, change the sign. So an example of that, if your slope is 1, 4, that becomes 4. So flip it so that it's 4 over 1, or just 4. And then if it's positive, it becomes negative. If your slope was 2/3, you flip it, so 3 goes on the top, and then you add a negative. If your slope was negative 2, for example, you're going to flip it, so 2 goes on the bottom, and then you're going to change the sign from negative, you're going to go to positive. And that actually is what our slope is here. So the perpendicular m, we're going to take 2, which we can also write as 2 over 1, and we're going to flip it. So 1 goes on the top, 2 goes on the bottom, and then we change the sign, it becomes negative like that. So our new slope is m equals negative 1/2. Or, because this is negative already, this actually stays positive. Sign is different than the original one. So if this is negative, it becomes positive. Our slope is going to be positive 1/2. So in our equation now, we have y equals positive 1/2 x plus c. We don't know what c is. Usually we could let c be any number we want to be, but we have a restriction on this question. On this one, we have to make sure that our line passes through the point 4, negative 3. So I'm going to write down that point here. We have 4, we have negative 3. So that means when x is equal to 4, y is equal to negative 3. If we want to find c, all we're going to do is we're going to take the y, we're going to put it in for y over here. We're going to take the x, and we're going to put it in for x over here. So negative 3 goes in for y, equals 1/2 times x, which is 4, plus c. So I'm going to leave that negative 3. 1/2 times 4, that's like saying half of 4. That's 2, plus c. We want to figure out what c is, so I'm going to get rid of this positive 2. Bring it over, becomes negative 2. We have negative 5 equals c. I'm going to circle that again. So our y-intercept is negative 5. Our perpendicular slope is positive 1/2. To find our equation, we are going to write y equals mx plus c, or y equals 1/2 x minus 5. Our c is minus 5, our m is 1/2. We sub it into our equation, and there it is right there.